Here they come.
Good evening. It's 7:01 on April 14th. So we'll get started with our zoning board meeting tonight. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if we could. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kick off. Oh, well, welcome to everyone in person, and we've got a few online on the Zoom meeting. So welcome to our little meeting tonight. So we have in attendance Ed Herman, Jesse Gerritsen, and myself, and I believe Roger is on Zoom.
Yes.
Okay. So we've got all four board members. So let's get right down to business and start with the first item. That's discuss and vote to approve the minutes from the March 10th, 2025 meeting. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to review those. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy.
All right, Jesse's happy.
Page 2. Page 2. 2/3 down the page under the zoning board, Ed Herman. He spelled zoning wrong.
Zoning. All right, is that all you have, Ed?
Yeah. God bless you.
And Roger, you have any additions or changes or amendments?
No, I read through them and from what I can tell, it looked good.
All right. I'm good with them. I didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary. So if we've got a motion to accept,
Ed Herman, I motion to accept the minutes.
we've got a motion from Ed. Have a second.
Jesse James, second.
So we have a motion from Ed, Jesse James seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Second item on the agenda is discuss with possible action, confirm that a building permit for 100 Main Street complies with zoning code regulations and required setbacks. So, Tom, do you want to say anything about it?
So this is Tom Good, and I conferred with Jake, and regarding setbacks, I did not see any line boundary setback issues. I did question him regarding setback to the soil treatment area, and he assured me that the building would have no crawl space and no footing drains. Then allows him to move closer than it would if he had a crawl space or footing drains. So I guess that being said, his diagram reflects that idea, and I will leave it at that. I'm curious to see how that works out.
All right, Jake.
Well,
Go.
yeah, well, I'm right there.
Okay.
So I did have one other question regarding, so typically, as a building inspector, you know, you watch a building progress from footings to roof and final and all that. In the case for Thomas Kelly, what Susan Metzler's cabin, the only thing I really had to inspect was the footings and shim walls.
Right.
For concrete and steel. And then they moved the building in and they set it, and I did walk around it and look at it, but, you know, we've got an old building, we're moving from point A to point B. And, it's going to be what it is. And other than just being curious about it as it happens, I am kind of at a loss to know what the expectation is for the building inspector.
Okay,
And then the other thing is, the third thing, Jake has two buildings that he's moving down there. And they're both in close proximity to the existing septic and soil treatment area. And I'm assuming that you will be connecting into those. Yeah, okay. So anyway, when you design a septic systems are to match what goes with it. And as I recall, that was designed by Sarah Bergstrom for a three-bedroom residence. And now we've gone from a residence to a more public venue. And so you should get a hold of Sarah and have her check this out and make sure that what you've got there will suffice for what it is you want to do. So be very detailed when you call her and tell her, this is what I want to do. I do not doubt what it will suffice, but it's required to check that out when you change your plan. And that's pretty much all I got.
okay. Jake,
Hey, real quick on it does have a crawl space, but the crawl space is over 20 feet away. The porch, which doesn't have a crawl space, can be within 10 feet. That's what I was thinking. So the porch is, I think it's actually 12 feet away, and then the crawl space is 20 feet away.
Thank you. I kind of wondered about that.
Yeah. And on the plans, Sarah Bergstrom already did update it to having the depot there. And then she asked me what I was going to do with the bunkhouse, and I told her I'm going to put 2 restrooms in there. And so she did a really quick update as far as what the flows would look like, and so we'll get down with more details once it's actually going to happen. We were going to spend a couple $1,000 if we can never get it done. So
Will you just make sure you get that updated report turned into the town, please?
yes,
you're referring to from Sarah for the WTS.
Yes.
Want to be clear. All right.
So the corner of the roof now is still basically the same setback off the old Main Street. It's been moved. Okay.
it's 0 setback off the Highway 76 Main Street.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
And it's actually the porch that's 0 setback, right? Because the porch sticks past the roof by approximately 2 feet, so.
So this building permit is, just to clarify, the proposed train depot is in a different location than when Jake was trying to get the variance, where it was behind the leach field. He's now moved it downstream from the leach field. And what I see on the drawing is the like Jake said, the front of the porch would be on the 0 setback at Main Street. And then if I understood correctly, the side porch between depot and the leach field would be over 10 feet from the edge of the porch.
The leach field will be
12 feet over.
from the porch.
Okay. All right. So we're the only, I guess the only thing I see when I'm looking at what we have on the agenda for looking at the lot lines and setbacks, it's a 0 setback on Main. The porch meets that. The only other setback that would come into play on the depot would be the OWTS, which it looks like we meet that. And then the proposed bunkhouse on the back appears to be on the 5 feet setback from the old Main Street. And meets that requirement.
It's quite a bit shorter than the depot, so
Yeah.
I can tuck it back there, get it far enough away from the leach field. Leave it 5 feet off the non-existent old Main Street.
All right.
So I'm not requesting a variance.
All right. Roger, Ed, do you have any other questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Roger, go ahead.
All right, I would like to ask Jake if he has considered all the options in moving this structure. Town of Pitkin can grant him permission to operate out of the location where the train depot is right now, any kind of a business he wants to operate. It'll be contingent on a specific purpose, whether it's as a museum, a gift shop, a coffee shop. It'll be specified with this agreement with the town. It's been done with other property owners in town. And it doesn't require a zoning change to do this. Is he satisfied that all of that is going to fail? Is that why we're going through the 100 Main Street thing right now?
So I guess a couple of things, Roger. One is that there was a zoning change request that did fail. There is in the zoning code, trying to find a couple of, I want to say contingencies, but I'm not sure that's conditional uses. Thank you. There's a couple of conditional uses in the zoning code, but none of those would apply to the depot. So there's nothing in the zoning code that would permit the town to give him a different conditional use for where it's at. It would be.
Well, that's not why, that's not exactly what I'm talking about. There was not a conditional use for, wood carvers, that do chainsaw carving on residential areas also. Or as we go further up the street, we had, people renting out ATVs and various different things. All kinds of stuff. This can be worked out through the town council. Yes, there will be contingencies on both sides. They will not be able to move the building. They'll not be able to expand it any larger. It'll have to be kept as a historic structure. And there will probably be restrictions on parking. But it can be worked out. And this is what the zoning board was set up to do. If you just want to, stick with what the zoning says, why do we have a variance committee in the first place? I'm trying to find out a way we can work with the property owner and the town, keep the building where it is.
Yeah, the reason that it's gone to this or gone this far is, I think we tried to rezone it. And then I believe I had some email correspondence and Tom and I spoke personally. And what I was left with was a response in an email that said, this will never happen, or this will never get rezoned, period, in the story. And so after hearing that, I just gave up and I was gonna go ahead and just move it. So I was told we couldn't do the conditional use, and I can't remember why, so. That's where I'm at.
All right. Ed, do you have anything else? Okay, so I would say with the matter at hand, unless Jesse has something else he wants to say, the matter at hand is looking at the setback of the property to see if the building permit could be approved there. Jesse, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, I'm very much like Roger Lowell. I think it's sad to see the structure have to move. And when the zoning board 4-0 voted to encourage the trustees to approve the zone change, and it died because of a 2-2 board. I think that is bad. That even number of trustees that we've had for several months now really stalemates things for progress in the town of Pitkin. And I was very upset when I found out that just moving the ditch did not supply the parking. With very nominal fee, we could have lots of parking. So I'll rest my case, but I'm with Roger. I hate to see this historical building move when it was the center of all the business of Pitkin after the railroad came through, the products coming into town and going out of town from the depot. Why it ever got changed to residential off of business, I have no clue. I was not around back then. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jesse. So I'm going to go back to the matter at hand tonight is to simply confirm that the building permit complies with the zoning code regulations and required setbacks. I don't believe that it's up to the zoning board to hash out what was determined by the board of trustees for as far as the zoning code change. So with the matter at hand, I personally don't see an issue with the building permit in the location where it's stated on the drawing when it comes to required setbacks in our zoning code regulations.
Mr. Chairman, I left off one of my notes here. Is there a zero appeal process unless you hire an attorney and go through the court system of Gunnison County after the board's failure to agree on a unanimous vote?
So my understanding is once the board of trustees made the decision on the zoning code, it would be an appeal to the district court is where it would be. And it looks to me like what Jake has decided to do is rather than go through that lengthy process, move the depot to a location where he doesn't have to fight so much to get it moved and get it done. So I don't know. We can vote on this if we want. I guess we probably should as a board to see. I guess to direct Tom on the building permit. Before we do that, though, I'd be more than willing to open it up to any public comments, either on Zoom or anyone here in person. All right, doesn't look like anybody on Zoom is raising their hand or waving at us. I don't see anybody in person jumping up. So I guess I'd suggest if we've got a motion, then to move forward with the building permit, I'd entertain that motion.
Mr. Chairman, I so move that we continue with this building permit and get it issued, and all that the petitioner wants done appears to me is totally in line, so let's approve it.
All right, so we've got a motion to approve the building permit or make sure that it complies with zoning code regulations and required setback. Do we have a second for it?
And I'll second that.
Ed Herman seconds it. So all in favor, say aye.
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 I'll say aye with some reservations.
Roger, could you say that again? We couldn't understand you.
I will say yes with some reservations. It looks like there's gonna be a lot of snow off of County Road 76 pushed into this building.
Okay. So I do want to come back to one of Tom's questions, I guess, as far as the zoning code or zoning board thoughts on how far the building inspector should go on this. I would probably agree with what Tom said with what he did on Thomas Kelly's, where you inspect the footers, foundation. And then once it's set, then I would say you're done at that point as well, because there's no other major structure difference on either buildings. So that's just my thoughts. Anybody else have any input on it?
I agree. If there were any electrical or plumbing situations, we've got to get those permits anyway, so that might free up our city inspector.
Okay. Great. Ed?
No.
Roger? All right.
Yeah.
Then Roger, did you have something?
No,
Okay.
I hope this is a backup plan.
All right, so let's go to item number 3, which is back on our zoning code revisions, where we had left the last time and at the last meeting, I believe, on the zoning code revisions, we had talked about the different inspections. And I took the 2012 inspections that were in the zoning code and just removed out of those the reference to the International Residential Code numbers and retyped those up. And I ended up giving a copy of those to Phil the other day, to have him look at them. I have a copy here for Tom somewhere. Here they are. Yeah. But I guess what I'd like to do tonight is we can take a quick look at them, but I really want Phil's input as well before we decide on anything on the inspection list. So I'd say if we start kind of in order, we'll run through them fairly quick, I think. So we start with the footer inspection. Again, I took out of the reference to the zoning, or excuse me, to the building codes until we can update our building code sometime next year. Then we'll put it back in at that point. So I'm just going to ask if there's any feedback on the items that are on the footer inspection.
This is Jess. Just the building permit itself was the first thing I was going to discuss, to make sure that follows the outline.
And
So how far do we, what I'm talking about is how far do we go with well and septic and all this before the building permit, before we even dig a footer?
well, that's all part of the building permit as far as the wells and OWTS, and that's all, I mean, that's stated in the zoning code
Right.
for the requirements.
I was just unclear how far you was wanting to go tonight.
All I was wanting to look at tonight were the inspections.
Yes, I've got it.
And the one thing I saw on the footer inspection, just to bring forward, is part way down where it says an 8 inch by 16 inch minimum size for non-engineered footing. I believe that's what's actually in the UBC and the IRC. However, I know in talking to Phil, he said typically it's a 12 inch depth and 24 inch width for the soil up here. I don't know if we want to specify that on the inspection form, or I'm looking for feedback on that.
I would like Phil's feedback on that.
Okay,
I would suggest that, the footer size sometimes is dependent on what you're setting on.
right.
And what's going to be sitting on the footer. Yes.
Okay. And like I said, I want Phil's feedback on all of it.
Thing I noticed about that statement, Mr. Chairman, is non-engineered. That kind of messes with my mind.
Well, I would just from what I've seen on engineered drawings, and Tom could probably speak to this too. When you see the engineered drawings today, most engineers are going to well above 97 UBC. Most of them are going probably 18 or 21. So I think the reason, at least I'm interpreting the reason it was put in the 2012 code, is that if you have a non-engineered footing, so someone wants to build a garage themselves, they may not have it engineered, but it gives at least a baseline for a minimum size for that footing. And that may be, I'm going to weigh heavily on Phil's recommendation here if he thinks that ought to be changed to a minimum of 12 by 24 up here for the soil. And
I'm very impatient to wait on Phil, please, and Todd. Yeah.
okay. All right. So any other input on footer inspection? And let's move on to the foundation inspection. Is there anything out of the ordinary that anybody sees there? Again, I want Phil's input.
Again, I'd say if our primary engineer, builders in Pitkin, Bill and Todd are happy with this, then I don't know why I wouldn't.
Okay. I'm weighing heavily on Phil and Todd and Tom on this.
And the engineered plans.
And the engineer, what?
Plans.
Oh, well, if we have engineered plans, then yeah, we're gonna go heavily on it. How about frame inspection?
Yes, I would say all these have been followed very well, and knowing how precise our local builders are and how close they work with our building inspector, I'd say all these bases have been pretty well covered.
I agree. I think they have to. Okay. And then the last is the final building inspection. Oop, Tom?
So, when we get really tall walls,
Uh-huh.
we have to fire block them.
Yep.
Did I miss that?
There was fire blocking on the second page of frame inspection.
Okay.
At the very top line.
I'd like to add a little something here.
Go ahead, Roger.
Okay, we're doing a layout of what,
Roger, we lost you. You're real weak.
this, I mean, the framing inspection, this is all you got to conform with? I mean, I've worked under, construction sites where they counted the number of nails in the plywood, counted number of nails in the sheetrock. I mean, the size nails, fasteners, length of nails. I mean, it gets, if you're going to do it right and spell out every detail of framing and all this good stuff, it's going to get really complicated. My fear with this is they're going to say, well, there's the minimum we got to have. We can just put the nails wherever we want. We don't need hurricane ties. We don't need this. We don't need that. I mean, it all comes down to whether or not these structures have been engineered or qualified people are building them. I'm not sure we can tell them in a one-page inspection sheet how to build a house. But
Roger,
this makes us liable. We're going to sign off on this. Someone's going to sign off and say, all this has been done, but it is not inclusive enough to tell how many nails are in the shingles or anything else.
Roger, is what you're saying that you feel like this is a lot of rhetoric, to basically check on the builder to make sure everything's right? You think it's a little overkill?
Well, it's not inclusive enough to include everything. So, and framing, yeah, 3 studs in the corners, all that kind of good stuff. There should be diagonals and various other things in certain areas. Certain underlayment has to be, structurally set up. If you have 2-story, your framing on the bottom story is 2x6, 16-inch center. The upstairs can be 2x4. I mean, it's all an engineered system that, so these homes need to be designed by someone. And then that criteria followed through. So typically, the way these inspections are done is the building inspector looks at a set of plans, determines whether or not they have, the builder has satisfied all those specifications. I'm not really sure what we're doing here, is trying to tell the building inspector how to do his job, or it's not a very thorough way of telling the builder how to do it, unless you get a lot more thorough.
So
Now,
Roger,
I like the idea of a final inspection so that people can get occupancy permits, various other things. And that final inspection, well, should include all the inspections done from the footing all the way through the roof, windows, everything else. I mean, we don't have a window and door inspection here. The environmentalists say those are the most important things in the house nowadays. Too much glass, all this kind of stuff. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. How much
Okay.
do you want to regulate?
well, and I don't believe this is trying to regulate, Roger. When I spoke with Phil about even doing inspection checklists, as an example, I think I even talked to Tom, and I know Phil told me that most of the time when inspectors that he works with come in and do an inspection, they don't have a checklist they go off, but they do look at the engineer drawings. And they go off of that to see if things are done as the engineer specified. but we also have building in Pitkin where maybe we don't have engineer drawings, or the individual, the homeowner may want to build something, like a garage. Maybe they want to build their house. But this gives them something to go off of, at least to help guide them through the process, rather than just leave them hanging and trying to figure it out on their own. I'm a little bit confused though, when we say the final building inspection, we have to go back and look at the footer inspections, the foundation inspection, the framing inspection. But then you said we either need to be really detailed, or I guess I'm interpreting that you're saying we shouldn't have a framing inspection. And we go off the engineer drawings that sometimes we don't have. So I think that's all we're trying to do here. Not create a minimum list, but it's things that people need to be looking at. And whether we have Tom as an inspector or someone else an inspector in the future, we at least have something to go off of to start these inspections. I mean, that's my thoughts on why we're doing this. I think it was very clear from our town attorney on a final building inspection, so that we can have a certificate of occupancy, that we absolutely must have that at the completion of a construction project. And I would agree. I don't know how you can get to a final building inspection without at least having something to show it past footer inspections, foundation inspections, and framing inspections. That's my thoughts on it.
Okay, you can draw up your own building permit. You can, your own building plans. Take it to an engineer and get them stamped. He's gonna look it over, see if it meets the standards. He's gonna make changes, add footings, interior footings for, interior wall supports, various things, but you can draw floor plans, roof plans, window plans, doors. You can draw all of that up yourself. I think it's imperative, if you do not have architectural plans, that you at least get, and this is what Gunnison County requires. You cannot get a building permit in Gunnison County without engineered stamped plans.
So what you're talking about, Roger, then is a change to the zoning code that says basically anytime you want to build anything in the town of Pitkin, you've got to have engineered plans. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's it.
So if you want to
100-pound snow load, the whole meal deal.
So if you want to build a garage or a shed that's bigger than, let's say it's 200 square feet, you want to go and get engineered plans for that?
I think they pretty much require engineered plans for living structures. If you're going to have a living space in your garage, yes. If it's just storage, I don't know that they really care if your garage falls in with an improper roof or not.
Okay.
But it's a public safety issue is all it is. So I don't know.
So then I think it's something I need to bring back to the zoning board. Do we want to go back and look at the zoning code to stipulate that we have to have engineered plans anytime we want to build anything in Pitkin? I know, listening to the people in the town of Pitkin, they don't want us to make things more difficult. And I think that's what we're going to do when we tell them they have to have engineered plans for anything that they want to build.
I thought I understood Roger to say for residents, engineer plans, yes, but not for a accessory building.
He did say that.
Talk to Phil about this.
Okay, I think that's a good recommendation.
Yes, I think he has worked with county, all kinds of construction needs. You want these houses that are built to be built to certain standards. The only way you can get that, whether it's an owner built or contractor built, is to at least start with plans that have engineer stamps on them.
So I'm gonna throw Tom under the bus, just as a question. Since you've been doing the building inspection, have you seen a residential structure built without engineer drawings?
If I have, I don't remember.
Okay, and maybe it's good to put it in the zoning code, but I think if people are building residential structures, they probably are getting them engineered in most cases. Tom, did you have something else?
There are still a few people out there who actually do know how to build and can draw up plans that are totally adequate to do what they want to do. That is becoming fewer and fewer people these days.
Yeah.
Which is why I do not recall seeing
Okay.
Residences or houses that have not been engineered.
The last one I'm aware of is my own home in 2000. The local owner and a couple of his buddies got together and drew up plans, and somebody knew a little bit about electricity and somebody knew a little bit about plumbing, and they made them all, then got it approved and built it, and it still functions. That's the last one I know that's built by the owner.
Okay, let me, Roger, I'm gonna take your thoughts, your recommendation, and talk to Phil about it too, and then we'll try to bring it back at another meeting to see where we want to go with.
Do have
Okay,
Okay,
Okay, so I do have one and it's not done yet.
I thought that was a remodel.
So Mr. Ethan Beery and I went round and round and round. And I was highly skeptical of his idea.
Mhm.
But when he came back with pictures of a finished product he was gonna haul in here, I said, well, okay, that'll work.
Yep.
So, I can't just, well, we're on a blanket statement, say, no, you can't. You gotta have engineered plans. Now, I like engineered plans.
Mhm.
But, we used to have people that would come up here and they would come in with a D-log kit and build themselves a summer cabin.
Right.
And it was totally seasonal and they, came in and poured their beers and, spent a few weekends and they had a little 20 by 30 cabin. It was totally adequate. Some of those things are still standing around. So on the one hand, I do like engineered plans. As things progress and develop and we get more and more regulations, becomes more and more difficult for individuals to actually pull that off themselves.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I would just as a blanket policy exclude that possibility. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Okay, so we're gonna set on it and everybody think about it. I'll get with Phil and we'll bring it up at the next meeting. How about let's move on just to that building permit checklist. I pulled this from the 2012 code that I think just kind of a high level thing to go through to look at before you submit a building permit to say, okay, do I have elevation drawings? Do I have my floor framing plan showing this and that, roof framing plan? I think it's something that helps an individual if they're trying to put their things together before they get a permit to submit to the town to say, do I have all these things together? Okay. And I think that's all that it really is, or was intended even when it was drawn up a long time ago.
Going back, when I first joined the zoning committee back, I believe Mr. Starkman was chairman. One of the things I noticed in this, that he always pushed it I didn't see mentioned when it comes to the roof framing, was snow load requirements. That's the only thing I saw in this whole printout that I had any questions about.
So you're saying add the snow load requirements on it, under 5?
Yes,
I don't see
I
it.
don't see them mentioning, they mention all kinds of things, how far apart they are and a number of things and the layout of the structure and show all roof bearing locations and all these things, but, and I don't know that it's necessary, but it's unique to Pitkin and a lot of Colorado about snow load.
That's cool. Okay. I jotted it on here. I'll add it in there. Toss it around. I like that, so I don't miss it. Okay. So I'm gonna let those lie for now. I'll get with Phil. I may try to set up a little quick session with Phil and Tom and myself to go through it again. Get their input and then bring it back. I'd hope to do that this week, but I know Nancy was not feeling well, and then Phil's not feeling well, so I didn't want to get that close to him. All right, so back to my agenda. Is there? I know we looked at the zoning code revisions previously. We'd kind of gone through the whole list to see anything else. I think the only thing we were down to were those inspection checklists, unless someone says different.
Oh, I'm happy.
Okay. So I'm going to move off of the zoning code revisions. There was the one point on old business was the building permit update, but Tom didn't have any new permits for the month of March.
Sure.
I'm sorry, no, month of February in the March meeting.
I'll look.
You probably have some in March that you'll have in your April report. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'll check.
So, okay. So there's really nothing else on the building permits to look at. I do have one last thing I'm gonna throw in before we adjourn. And that is, 2 of our zoning board member terms come up at the end of this month. So I just want to make a public announcement. We have 2, we have Ed Herman and Jesse that are coming up at the end of April. I'm hoping that both of them will say that they want to continue on the zoning board. And then we also have the spot open from Gala, and Sarah will probably correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think Gala's position, if someone were to come into that, would be good. They would stay on until April 30th of 2027, as she came in on April of 2024. I believe that would be correct.
That is correct.
Okay. So that person, if there's someone out there that would just love to like to be on the zoning board, they would fill that spot until April 30th of 27. So I would say anybody that's interested in that, and for Ed and Jesse, if you want to continue on the board, probably need to get that information to Sarah before noon on Wednesday,
Correct.
so it can be on the Board of Trustees meeting on next Monday. All right.
That's for a 3-year term.
Yes, it is for a 3-year term. That is correct. All right. So with that, is there anything else that anybody has? It's not on the agenda, but I would take a motion to adjourn then. All right, Ed makes a motion to adjourn. This is Ed Punalto. I'll just second that one. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you tuning in.
I want to thank you, gentlemen.